My name is Megan Michio. I am on the substance use prevention training team. I'm on that team 2 days a week, and 3 days a week I'm over at Thomas Jefferson High School. So I'm going to introduce our speakers today, and they have created a tobacco and vaping e-cigarette trusted adult presentation to help parents and guardians and other trusted adults better understand the vaping trend in the country and specifically in Colorado. The presentation focuses on what vaping is and what the data show about youth use, the health effects linked to vaping, and talking to your young person about e-cigarette use and quitting. That we will have an accompanying video that covers the stealth vaping. And then at the end, we will have time for question. So we have 2 speakers today. The first person I'm going to introduce is Daniel Nieman. Daniel started working with the City and County of Denver as the tobacco program analyst in July 2022. Here he focuses on prevention, cessation, and education for young people across Denver. Daniel attended Springfield College for his bachelor's, where he majored in youth development and minored in health studies, graduating in 2008. 11 years ago, he found himself in Colorado Springs, where he worked with the Boys and Girls Club, teaching leadership and health programs. Realizing his passion for health, he returned to school and received his master's in public health from Colorado School of Public Health in 2016. Combining this passion for youth work and health, Daniel worked with the YMCA, Healthy Kids Club Colorado, and the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver after graduating. Through these positions, he gained experience in tobacco and vape prevention and education, as well as youth culture in Colorado. Daniel has worked in the public health atmosphere for 7 years and has nearly 2 decades of youth development experience. We also have Angie Kogovsek, who Angie is a tobacco prevention specialist at the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment. She is working on completing her degree in business, project management, and has over 10 years of experience in public health. Angie currently works on educating housing providers on smoke-free policy implementation in multi-unit housing settings and supports the tobacco program's youth programming efforts with education to youth, parents, and educators on tobacco, vaping, prevention, education, and policy. She has worked with youth for more than 10 years in both tobacco and maternal child health, and has worked with community-based organizations that primarily work with underserved populations to promote smoke-free worksite policies, where straight to work young adults work to receive services. Additionally, Angie has worked extensively on clinical systems change to work with healthcare organizations in Denver and across Colorado with focus on increasing quit attempts through evidence-based cessation services. So thank you both so much for being here, and we will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share our presentation here. We are using Prezi. All right. So as mentioned, my name is Daniel Nieman, and with me is Angie. We work with the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment, mostly doing cessation prevention and education with young people. We're going to start our presentation here, just talk a little bit about who we are. Housed within the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment, we work in the Community and Behavioral Health Program. There are many other, there are many other programs housed in there, public health investigations, shared services and business opportunities, animal protection, environmental quality, and the Office of the Medical Examiner. As I mentioned, we are in CBH. We work in the tobacco program. We focus on things like secondhand smoke exposure. Angie does a lot of work with that. We also do help with quitting or cessation. Cessation is just a fancy word that means quitting. You might hear me use that term a lot. We work with policy implementation, and where Angie and I focus is youth access. And you see that says tobacco 21 down there. Tobacco use for the state of Colorado and in the city of Denver is 21. It's no longer 18. All right. So we're going to dive right in. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will have time for questions at the end. Angie and I are happy to answer any questions and help you along your way with anything you might need help with. So diving right in, you may know some of this stuff, you may not. We're going to talk about what vaping is. So what is in a vape? Vaping is a method of inhaling vaporized aerosol. So sometimes the term vape can be a misnomer. When we say vape, some people might think, oh, it's just water vapor. Well, that's not really true. These vaping products are almost always associated with nicotine, sometimes marijuana, and even other harmful substances. While vapes come in all shapes and sizes, most of them are going to have the same components that you'll see here on the left of the screen. So they all have a mouthpiece that's used to obviously inhale the aerosols. They're all going to have a cartridge that stores e-liquids and an atomizer that heats that liquid into a smokable aerosol. And then, of course, the battery, that's what's going to make it an e-cigarette as opposed to another type of nicotine device. So there are different names for these devices. I'm mostly going to use the term vape or vape pen or e-cigarette, but they may be called mods, pods, e-hookahs or jewels, or any another a number of other names. This model that you see here in the picture, that's just one type of e-cigarette. They come in different models. We'll have a few pictures as we go throughout this presentation. Many of them now are smaller and sleeker, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about stealth vaping. So let's talk about some of the numbers right now, and I apologize in advance. I know some of these graphs are a little bit blurry, but I will explain them. So youth trends, we're going to start in Colorado. So this graph is from 2019. The data from 2021 shows very similar output. However, we just don't have a graph that illustrates it. So what you can see here is that e-cigarettes are the second most used substance among middle and high schoolers in the state of Colorado. Behind that is marijuana and then cigarettes. Alcohol remains the highest used, but e-cigarettes are trending upward over the past decade. So this graph actually is going to show that a little bit better. The blue bars that you're going to see are cigarette use among middle and high schoolers in the state of Colorado. And that orange bar is going to be e-cigarette use. So obviously back in 2012, you can see that cigarette use was much more prevalent than e-cigarette use. But over the last decade, that e-cigarette use has drastically risen until its peak in 2019. Now you'll notice that there's a drop off in 2021, 2020 and 2021. We're hoping that's because of our efforts and others, city and county efforts and state efforts. However, it's very possible that it could be due to COVID. We're hoping that's not the case and that we're going to continue to see that downward trend. So this next graph here actually is going to show across the United States, different groups and how regularly they use. So you can see different indicators. The big ones we want to talk about are LGBTQ plus trans students used at a higher rate than their heterosexual counterparts. And also poor grades seems to be an indicator as well. And what that tells us is that stress is a very big indicator of young people using these products. So this graph shows not only e-cigarettes, but also other tobacco products. So cigarettes, chewing tobacco, smokeless tobacco, etc. But what it shows, again, is that stress is going to be the biggest issue when a young person uses. A lot of young people use because they are stressed and they think it's going to help. I want to be very clear that e-cigarettes and other nicotine products do not help with stress long term. They can actually worsen anxiety and depression among young people. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about dual use. So a lot of people think that when an adult especially uses e-cigarettes, that means they're trying to cut down on cigarette use. Well, that may be true of an adult, but the studies show that most people who smoke start smoking before the age of 21. And while that's remaining true today, young people who start smoking e-cigarettes actually have a higher chance of then smoking traditional combustible tobacco cigarettes. So curbing that use when they're young is very important. We know the harmful effects long-term of cigarettes. Unfortunately, e-cigarettes have not been around long enough for us to have conclusive data on long-term effects. On long-term effects. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment too. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about the why of young people. Why do young people use? Well, these are just a few of the reasons that we have heard from young people about why they use. So social approval, that means that society really approves of e-cigarettes more than traditional tobacco cigarettes. And again, that's because they haven't been around as long. We don't know why those are have such ill effects. The taste and the flavors are more attractive to young people than traditional tobacco or menthol flavors. It's an alternative to smoking. They're curious. Curiosity in young people is normally a good thing. We don't really want them to be curious about this because nicotine is so addictive. It's accessible and convenient for young people. They use it as a possible cessation aid. Cessation, again, meaning quitting tobacco cigarettes. And of course, peer pressure is one we hear as well. Okay, we're briefly going to touch on marijuana and how that relates to vaping and e-cigarettes. So marijuana e-devices, marijuana, just like nicotine, is only available legally for people of 21 age and older in Colorado. The human brain doesn't fully develop until about 24 to 26 years old. And marijuana has a very strong negative effect on a still growing brain. So do things like nicotine and alcohol. That's why we push so hard for the age of nicotine to be moved from 18 to 21, one of the reasons. So marijuana, just like nicotine, has a negative effect on the still developing brain. Now we're going to take a look at this top row of pictures. These are, it says first to fourth generation. There are more generations of nicotine vaping products out there. There are also different generations of marijuana products, and they start off by looking quite different from their counterparts. But as the different generations come around, it becomes tougher and tougher to tell these products apart. So just something to keep an eye on as you're talking to your young person is that you might maybe not be sure what is in these products. They do look similar, but just something to keep an eye on. All right, we're going to delve back into vaping and nicotine products, and we're going to talk about the health effects. So this is probably one of the biggest reasons we're here on this call. We want to talk about what are the health effects of e-cigarette use. So what is in a vapor? Unfortunately, these e-cigarette products, as I mentioned, have not been around long enough for us to do long-term tests on it. They've only been around for about 20 years. That's not a very long time when we look at how long cigarettes have been around, which is decades and centuries. So we don't really know their long-term effects, which to me is very scary. We do know that these e-cigarettes and vape pens contain things like nicotine, which is highly addictive. It's one of the most addictive substances on the planet, and it reaches a person's brain quicker than any other drug. Other things found in the plume while smoking an e-cigarette are things like diacetyl and other cancer-causing chemicals, ultrafine particles, and heavy metals. So let's dive in a little bit more to what is inside a vapor. So that chemical vapor, as I mentioned, it's not just water. They have harmful toxins that are found in these devices. Like I mentioned, diacetyl is one of those chemicals, and that is known to cause something called popcorn lung. Other cancer-causing chemicals like propanol, formaldehyde are found in e-cigarettes. Now, this is not just for the e-cigarette user. This can also be found in secondhand e-cigarette vapors. So that is something important to remember. If someone in your home is using them and trying to quit, have them use them outside. That's going to be the most safe place to use them, especially around your children, around your pets, etc. There's also heavy metals. I have my joke in here, no, not Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath, the heavy metals that we want our young people to be into. Unfortunately, it has things like cadmium and tin and lead inside of those plumes of what people are smoking. And that can actually cause physical damage to the lungs and cause long-term breathing problems. And then, of course, there is nicotine. Nicotine, as I mentioned, is one of the most addictive drugs on the planet. And most of these products will contain nicotine. Even if they say they don't, there are still trace amounts of nicotine in these products. And again, we do know that nicotine can lead to or worsen things like anxiety and depression. So very important to keep our young people away from nicotine, as we're dealing with a lot at that age, right? Especially with the pandemic still going on. There's a lot happening. We want to keep these products out of their hands. That is our mission. So we're going to talk about nicotine a little bit more. That is the main drug that is in these products. So nicotine affects your brain in a negative way, especially for young people. They can harm the brain, the part of brains that control learning and mood and impulse control. Each time a new skill is learned, synapses are created in the brain, and nicotine actually changes how those synapses fire and change it again in a negative way. So this image that is up here, you can see is a scan of a brain. And the first image says nothing. That means no puffs of a cigarette, no puffs of an e-cigarette, and so no nicotine in that person's brain. And you can see all those colors, meaning that the synapses are firing, that the brain is very active. The more puffs taken, the more cigarettes smoked, the less those synapses are firing, the less activity is happening. Now, that doesn't mean that after 3 cigarettes, the brain will stay this way forever. That is 3 cigarettes in a short period of time. The brain will recover. If someone smokes 3 cigarettes, decides they never want to smoke again, their brain activity will return, obviously, to that first image. But the more a young person smokes, the more nicotine that is in that brain, the less those synapses are going to be firing. Okay, so we're going to talk about media and marketing next, and we are going to go back a little bit further than just those vape products. We're going to talk about big tobacco. Big tobacco meaning those large tobacco companies that own the cigarette brands. So for example, Philip Morris owns Marlboro. That is a big tobacco company. RJ Reynolds owns Camel. Those companies not only own cigarette brands, but they've also started buying out either patents for e-cigarettes or creating their own e-cigarette and vape brands. So this is a real ad from a long time ago in a magazine where they have Santa Claus smoking a Pall Mall. Not very attractive now. Obviously, it has not aged well, but that was obviously directed at young people. So the progression of marketing. You can see these images here from the 60s, from the 50s. They have attractive women, attractive men smoking their products, using their products, and the vape industries are using very similar tactics today to get young people interested in vaping and in smoking. The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, estimates that 7 out of every 10 middle and high school students has seen an advertisement for e-cigarettes, whether that be print, whether that be digital, whether that be on TikTok or YouTube from influencers. They have seen advertisements for some sort of e-cigarette product. Now, Juul is one of the biggest offenders of marketing towards young people. In a article published in 2019, in a congressional report published in 2019, they said that Juul had paid more than $200,000 in marketing to young people. And that's a lot of money to give to young people for marketing on TikTok and YouTube. So we're going to talk more about Juul as they're kind of the big name in this. We're going to talk about their influence on young people and e-cigarettes and where it's gone now. So the rise of Juul. Juul was originally marketed as a safe alternative to smoking, and while those goals may have been noble, they pretty early on set their sights on young people, realizing that they could make a much bigger profit by selling to young people and not just to adults. So things that they did was they advertised on television, they advertised in print media, and they had digital ads. They also, with their flavors, made it very enticing for young people to want to smoke their products. Some of their flavors included things like dragon's milk and unicorn blood on top of like mango and cherry and blueberry. So very youth-centric focused, advertising. Now, the FDA warned Juul against these actions, and they did pull back in 2019 with their ads. And they were forced to pull back with their flavors in 2019 to just sell tobacco and menthol flavors. Now, as all this was going on, their push towards young people was still happening. For example, they went into schools and talked to young people in schools. They even hosted health adventure summer camps for third graders where they advertised their products. So because of all this, Juul was sued in 2020 by 33 states and Puerto Rico because of their targeting of youth. Just a few months ago, in August of 2022, a court settlement was reached that had Juul paying out nearly $500 million. So because of all these regulations, Juul has really been pushed back with young people. Young people aren't really using those Juul pods anymore. One of the things we have noticed, though, with Juul is that they're restricted because they're a reusable product. So what I mean by that is you have your Juul cartridge and you buy flavored pods to put in it. Now we're seeing the uprise of different types of products that are single use only, single use or disposable. So these are just a few examples, Puff, Hype, and Views. And they are not as heavily regulated as Juul. So they can still use flavors like mango, blueberry, kiwi, things like that. We showed this clip to a group of young people just about a week ago or so, and their reaction was, why do they look like crayons? Well, you can infer from that what you will, but it's because those bright colors attract young people. Now, these single-use vape products also create a unique environmental issue. So a lot of times people throw them away, they'll throw them in a recycling bin, or they just leave them outside. That's not good for the environment. These break down slowly over time and they spill chemicals, e-liquid, and used batteries into the environment. To properly dispose of these, we actually need to take them to a hazardous waste facility because they are classified as biohazardous waste, toxic waste, and e-waste, and those all need to be separated out. So another, like I said, a unique environmental problem arising with these disposable one-use vape products. Okay, we're going to talk about something called stealth vaping. You may or may not have heard about that, but honestly, it kind of is what it sounds like. So stealth vaping, as you can see from this picture here, is the art of vaping in a crowded area without getting noticed. So this is kind of twofold. One part of it is hiding the device. So devices are now being made smaller and sleeker and easier to hide in a hand or in a pocket. They're also being made to look like non-assuming items. That picture you see on the bottom, that's made to look just like a Sharpie, but it's a vape pen. It holds e-liquid, nicotine, etc. The top two pictures you see there, they're made, those vape devices are made to be put in there. The strings of that hoodie is the vape device. That's where the mouthpiece where you breathe from, or you inhale from. And then the one next to it, that backpack, that looks like maybe something that you get water from, but no, that is again meant for smoking nicotine. The other half of this is hiding the plume. So the plume is what we call that big puff of smoke that comes from e-cigarettes. It's usually very visible, even more so sometimes than your traditional cigarettes. But there are websites and TikTok and YouTube videos that discuss how to conceal that plume, how to hide that plume while smoking in public. So some of those websites have advice that includes, again, using a small device that can be concealed in the hand, covering the LED light with your finger or with tape, and then either exhaling into your shirt, tucking your mouth into your shirt and exhaling, or holding your breath for 10 seconds or so that the plume dissipates in your lungs. Now, we know that's bad. The only thing that are supposed to be in your lungs is clean, fresh air. So holding this in your lungs creates a whole nother set of issues. So this is where we're going to try to play a video for you. And I believe Leah, you're going to have to play that, or Megan, you're going to have to play that. Do I need to stop sharing?
Yes, if you want to stop sharing, I will go ahead and try to share my screen.
Great.
All right, let's see how this works. Just let me know if you're not hearing it.
Is outfitted with vaping devices, but you can't see them. Why? They're designed to look just like normal school gear, for sale online and in vape shops, giving kids new ways to hide their vaping habits anywhere they go, including school.
It's rampant. I think every administrator who has a middle school and high school are grappling with vaping issues.
Superintendent Melissa Varley oversees the Berkeley Heights School District in New Jersey.
It's virtually undetectable. We don't know if a student is vaping in a classroom.
So would you know what to look for?
We're taking over a classroom at this high school. It's filled with student volunteers. Thank you, guys. We're going to plant these hidden vaping devices and bring in teachers and parents and see just how well they do at spotting the vape.
I get to work,
Here's one that's designed to look just like a black marker.
stashing stuff all over the classroom.
So this guy looks like a USB. It's not, it's a vape.
And on students too.
Sophia looks like she's just wearing a regular hoodie, but underneath a vaping device.
Some vapes even look just like school supplies.
Looks just like a pen, but the vaping device is inside and you can write with it.
Time to bring in our volunteers.
I'm Vicki Lynn with the Today Show.
Nice to meet you.
And what's your name?
Miss Moretti.
Okay, Miss Moretti.
Yes.
We want to know if you can spot the vape. So we have outfitted this classroom with vaping devices. Look high, look low. You ready?
I think I'm ready.
You get 1 minute.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
She spots a couple of them,
That device that Dom's got there,
but breezes right past most
I think that could be.
before time runs out.
Two. And that is time. How many of you had a vaping device that she spotted?
3 items, not bad,
How many of you actually have vaping devices?
but she missed 11 of the 14 items we hid.
It's scary. Because it could be just in plain sight.
Some teachers spot a couple of the more obvious ones,
That looks like one too.
but most miss the harder to find items like this watch.
Sam is wearing what looks like a smartwatch, but you press this button, this part comes out. You can fill this with nicotine and it's an e-cigarette.
It blends in, so nobody would ever know.
All 5 teachers missing this vape backpack.
This one's got a hidden device right here in the strap.
And I'm a hiker. I mean, this is the first thing I would think of as be a camelback, so we can get water through it.
And the hoodie.
I think it's ingenious marketing, and I'm a little frightened.
This could be happening right under your nose.
Absolutely. It could be happening in my house. I have a 15-year-old.
Wow.
So now, no hoodies.
Even this school aide, a retired police officer, missing the watch and pen.
Very disheartening that there's so many out there that the kids can get access to.
What about parents? Will they do a better job spotting the vape?
I think that's a vaping device.
Not this group.
He was writing with a pen, but inside the pen,
Got me. I'm gonna go home and check pens.
Parent after parent also mistaking the decoys for vapes.
I was pointing at this one, but that looks fairly suspicious as well.
That's just a marker. And they confuse the real vapes for regular items.
what did you think this was?
Didn't think to look at that. Probably a marker or an eraser or a highlighter.
The most any of our volunteers spotted, just 5 of the 14 items we hid. That's 36%, a failing grade.
It's very, very scary.
An eye-opening experience for both teachers and parents.
If you have to hide something, then there's something wrong with it.
Scary to see how easily they can hide things like that.
Parents need to be more invasive in their kids' spaces and really actively engaged.
Yeah, we reached out to the Vapor Technology Association. They told us they don't approve of underage use of these types of devices and they're working to raise the purchase age to 21. I brought some of these items so you all could see. You know, this one looks like a marker and that's what people would mistake it for. Check that out. This is the highlighter we were talking about, Hoda.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, as you know,
Let's show that watch. That's
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
this one, you just pop it out right here and it tells the time. So you can easily see that there's a digital readout.
Right. This is
Hoodie
crazy,
another
the
one.
hoodie.
Nobody got the hoodie.
Craig, I'll return your hoodie later. No, but it's insane. I mean, it's like a vaping thing in here.
Vicky, but if
Right.
you're teaching class, like, wouldn't you see a kid who's like, even if they're
You would think so, but they break off into study groups, and that was what the teachers were telling us. You're dealing with 30 kids at a
Walk to the
time.
bathroom,
Exactly,
yeah.
down the hall, and
Right.
it just makes it so much easier. And when you have a little tiny pen like this,
Yeah.
that you can actually do
Look
your
at that.
homework with.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a real big challenge for teachers and parents, and they were talking about schools have anti-tobacco campaigns. Check to see if your district has one like the one we were at. That's another way that you can stay on top of this and
Yeah.
have those conversations with the kids. as
Yeah.
well.
Thank you.
All right, Vicky, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. That can be a little bit frightening when we talk about that. But that's just a really good way to illustrate kind of what I was talking about. These can be hidden in plain sight. So this is, I think, is going to try to. Uh-oh. Okay. Here we are going back. Okay. So next we're going to talk about having that conversation with your young people. So we titled this Trusted Adults because a trusted adult can be anybody that a young person trusts and that influences them in a positive way. So just a couple examples: coaches, mentors, teachers, and obviously parents can all be trusted adults. Now, you may have your own young person at home and you're probably a trusted adult for them, but you may be a trusted adult for somebody and not know it. A child's friend, somebody that you are in class with. If you're a coach, you may be a trusted adult for those young people and not know it. So make sure that you're always open to talking to those young people if they don't have somebody else that they can turn to. Now, we have a couple of suggestions for talking with your young person. Obviously, you know your young people better than I do, but we want to use these kind of 3 keys. So using open-ended questions can allow for more fluid conversation. So saying things like, tell me how you feel when you see your peers vaping can lead to more conversation than closed-ended questions such as, do you think vaping is safe? Because they might just say yes, no, I don't know, and end the conversation there. So use those open-ended questions more than you might think. Number 2 is be positive. Sometimes young people might come to you and say that they've tried this or they are doing this, and you might not be happy with that, but focus on the positive and reinforce those positive behaviors. For example, if they're coming to you, they might be looking for help. You know, you definitely are displaying maturity coming and talking to me about this. I really appreciate that. Stay away from pointing out what's wrong or why you're disappointed. And then try to utilize reflective and active listening. Be engaged when talking to your young person. I know we're all very busy, but try not to be cooking dinner or washing dishes or sending emails or what have you when you're talking to your young person. And then rephrase and reflect on what they were saying. Now, the next step is going to be giving feedback. So find out what your young person is looking for. Are they looking for advice? Are they looking for data? Are they looking for just someone to talk to? If you're looking for someone to just talk to, then you want to tailor your advice to fit that. You don't want to give them advice or data that they're not looking for. They may come back in a day or a week or something like that and look for more of what you want to talk about, but then I know it's tough. I'm someone who wants to fix every problem when a young person comes to me. Sometimes that's not what they need. So be sure to tailor your advice to that. Don't provide what's not asked for, and be sure not to make up or give inaccurate data. It's totally okay if you don't know something. Happens to me all the time. When I worked with young people at the Boys and Girls Club, I think that they respected me more when I told them I didn't know, but that I would find out. And with your young person, you can find out, or you can find out together. And then, of course, keep the conversation going. Make sure that you let them know that you're always there to talk to them, that they can come back to you with other concerns. The conversation may not happen right then and there. It may happen the next day or the day after that, but make sure that they know you're open to keep on talking. Okay, and then we're going to get into quitting. Now, again, cessation, just a fancy word for quitting, but you might hear that a lot when looking up different ways to help with quitting. They might be called cessation aids, things like that. So I have this image here on the right. It says everything changes eventually. This is an actual ad from Juul. They're saying that this old-timey cell phone has changed into our new smartphones, and our old-timey cigarettes will change into these electronic devices. Well, that is not accurate. We know that they're not healthier than regular cigarettes, and that there are potential long-term harms of them. Now, the FDA is the only organization that can call a cigarette tobacco cessation aid what it is, a cessation aid. The FDA has never approved any type of e-cigarette or vape device as a cessation product. In fact, the FDA has also denied over 55,000 products and flavors from coming onto the market because they failed to provide evidence that they protected public health. So kudos to the FDA on that. Here are some great resources that are available for you and for your young person. One that is a very good resource is the Colorado Quit Line. It's also called My Life, My Quit. This is just for Colorado residents, but it's for anybody age 12 and over. I know that seems young, but unfortunately that is the demographic that may need this. So this is good for e-cigarette, vape, traditional tobacco cigarettes, smokeless tobacco, anything that tobacco related that you're trying to quit, that a young person is trying to quit, you can find help at the Colorado Quit Line. Now, there are different ways to access this. So if you're more comfortable calling in, you can do that. You can do web chats, or you can text. I mentioned that this service is available for anybody 12 and over. Now, 12 to 17, they will not provide NRTs. NRTs are nicotine replacement therapies. So that's things like the nicotine gum or patch or lozenge. They are available for people's 18 and over, but not under 18. A couple other options are the Truth Campaign and smokefree.gov. That's the FDA's site. So feel free to take a screenshot of this. I can email this these links to our hosts, and they can email it out afterwards. But these are great resources for yourself or for your young person or a friend trying to quit. Often they're tailored by age and other demographics. So hopefully going through that, I know it was kind of quick, but hopefully that was some good information for you. I think Angie is going to put a short survey. It should only take about 20 to 40 seconds to complete, just to let us know how we did. Other than that, we have some time left over for questions, I hope. And I will stop sharing my screen.
All right, thank you so much for that. We do have a question here in the chat. If my kid needs gum for cessation, can their pediatrician prescribe that?
That's a very good question. And honestly, I don't know. That's something that you can ask your pediatrician.
Hey,
They may be
Daniel,
able-
so technically, yes, that's what we
Okay.
actually tell parents of youth under 18. If they think it's something that their young person really needs, talk to your child's provider, and they can do that. We just can't offer it through services like the Colorado Quit Line. They just have those regulations.
Thank you, Angie.
Let's see. It seems like youth vaping went down overall during COVID. What do you attribute that to?
Well, hopefully we're optimistic that that's because of the efforts of, Denver Department of Public Health and Colorado Department of Public Health and all of the other great organizations that are working towards lowering that. That's optimistically. There is the thought too that it's because young people had less access to going out and getting vape products. A lot of us were sequestered inside. There were no schools that we were going to. We're all online. So not only they could not get the vape products, but also maybe didn't have a place to smoke them. So that went down. As I said, hopefully Optimistically, it's because we're getting through to young people, but there is the possibility that that's not the case. The Colorado survey, the Healthy Kids Club survey, comes out, I believe it's every 2 years. So we'll have data on that in about a year. And hopefully we'll see that continuing to go down.
Thank you. Yeah, I think actually along with that, the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, we use that, here in DPS, and I know it's statewide. And one thing that's been nice to see is that the perception of harm in vaping has been going up.
Yes.
So I think, like you're saying too, it does help getting this information out to young people, and hopefully that's attributing to decreased use. Let's see, does anyone else have any other questions? Oh, let's see. Do teens know what they are vaping? Sometimes kids seem confused as to what's in their vape.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's tough sometimes. I think the language on it is tricky. I know, we often tell people that Juuls can have up to an entire pack of cigarettes. They can be equal. 1 Juul pod of nicotine is equal to an entire pack of cigarettes, nicotine wise. And that's because things like Juul, you have to kind of dial in how much nicotine you're getting out of it, and they're normally set at a very high level. So you have to manually change that. I would imagine that young people know that they're smoking nicotine as opposed to like marijuana, but like I said, those pictures can be tough to tell. Now, e-cigarette devices are not meant for marijuana. They're actually a little bit different. Marijuana has different oils and things like that that actually would clog and break an e-cigarette device. So they would know after that. But I would say mostly they do know what they're smoking. How much of the nicotine is going to be the big issue.
Thank you for that. Another one that came in, how do you handle a situation where a young person is vaping, but isn't coming to you to discuss? For instance, I work with young people at my part-time job who vape. How do I address it, or do I address it?
Yeah, another great question. I think that presenting some of the information, like we presented here, is very good, and then just letting them know, hey, I'm always here to talk. It's tough to approach a young person and accuse them of something because they can, A, you could be wrong. B, if you aren't wrong, they can kind of go back into the, pull away from you, and you don't want that either. So just finding ways to build up trust is great. I think one of the things that I have noticed that works with young people and teens is letting them know that these industries they do not care about their customers. They know that their products are harmful. They want your money. They want it long term, and they don't care about you. But I care about you. You as that person, and trying to build up that trust. It's tough to do. It might take some time. I don't know, Angie, if you have anything you want to contribute to that, but yeah, it's tough sometimes. I know that.
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes that's where Daniel and I could come in and present. Sometimes it's good to hear from other people. I think I have young people, I have kids that are teenagers, and I think a lot of times hearing from someone else is more powerful than hearing from the person that they're closest to. So that's where, bringing Daniel and I in to present sometimes can help as well.
Thank you for that. Let's see. I don't know if there's any, I don't think there's any others in the Q&A. Are there any others? Oh, wait, let's see. I don't see another one. If anyone else has any last minute questions, let us know. I did notice Angie put the survey in the chat. So if everyone could take a second to do that. Yeah, and that I don't see any more questions coming in. We appreciate you answering those and taking the time to present this information.
Someone raised their hand, I noticed.
Oh, how come I can't see that?
I don't know. I just saw Jennifer, someone raise their hand. So if that person
wondering, Leah, are you able to give the powers of unmuting or?
I can, however, it looks like maybe they took their hand down. If you would like me to unmute so you can ask a question, feel free to raise your hand again and I will unmute you.
Awesome. Or yeah, feel free if you want to type something in the
She
Q&A.
did. She just
Oh.
answered in the, she just said, sorry, I
All
came in.
right, Jennifer, you are unmuted.
Oh, I think Leah, it was just to let us know that she came in late for this. So I don't see any other questions in the Q&A.
Sorry, may I still speak?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm
Yes.
so sorry. I'm late to the meeting, but I was wondering, since I work in a middle school, I was wondering, you probably covered this, but can we make a presentation or make an appointment to have a presentation for students? And how does one do that? Because you guys sound really knowledgeable and I work in a big middle school.
Absolutely. Yeah. Angie and I would love to come in and present in a middle school. We've done that before. You can email us. I don't know if I still have that slide up. You can email us at our CBH or at our personal emails, and we can set up a time for you to come in, for us to come in and make a presentation.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can get that slide back up really quickly. So this is my personal email and Angie's personal email. Feel free to, like I said, take a screenshot or write it down. We will be happy to come in and present.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for being here. We really appreciate it. We will make sure we post this on our website. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I did have a question real quick. Is there any way to find